So when he comes on, I'm going to be asking him, some questions that I've had myself, and also from different players that I work with and have coached about, what should we be doing as players to get better. But if you guys that are coming on now have questions, please send them in the chat, and we will get to it. Here he is. Alex.
Hey, Rob. Hey, guys.
All right, mate. All freshen up and ready to go.
Yeah, sorry. We had a whole day of workouts, so and I'm going straight for dinner after, so I had to get ready.
No worries, man. Let me, I'm going to try to sort out this view. Do that. See if this, oh no, I don't want to do that. Let's just do speaker.
Oh, that's a new one.
I don't know if I have enough rights to just have me and you on the screen. I think you got to get the webinar thing to do that. Right, mate. I'll tell you what, we're just going to get into it because I know you got other things to get on with. And in a couple of minutes, I'll probably just tell everybody that's coming in why we started early. But I'm going to do a quick introduction. Alex is a very young but very experienced basketball coach, has worldwide experience coming from Surrey in England. And as I said just a minute ago, founder of Goldhawks Basketball Club in Surrey. Subsequently moved on to work with the NBA for about 3 years in Europe, traveling around Europe and also to the States, working within the league, spreading the game and doing all the things that the NBA does. And then left the NBA to go and pursue kind of his own mission, I would say, which is to what would you say your mission is, Alex? You'll describe it better than me.
Trying to change the way basketball coaches coach all around the world.
There you go. So like I said just a second ago, I think Alex has a really refreshing way of looking at the game. And so what I want to talk to you about today, Alex, is player development. And I just want to try to ask you as many questions as I can in our time. We're going to have about 30 minutes. And then I'll also take some questions on the chat if any of the kids have them.
Right.
So we have like some 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids on the call, all kids that are local in Sussex. Most of them will be playing National League to different levels. And so, I just want to talk about what your opinions are on how best to develop as a young player. And I think we can go in a few different directions, but I'm going to ask you a question which comes up a lot from kids. And I know you will take it the way that you take these things, and you'll spin it in your own way and give your own answer. But the question is, how many shots should I shoot every day?
Well, the key thing is it's not really a case of how many you're taking. And there's no such thing as muscle memory. So there's this long held tradition in basketball where it's the idea of 10,000 hours, where, the more shots you take, the better you're going to be as a shooter. But it's actually a complete myth, because the brain doesn't work like that. And as humans, we don't improve our skills doing that. We're not robots. We're not like computers. So actually, guys, it's less practice, but better practice is more important. So for instance, instead of doing spot shooting 1-on-0, where you're doing, like 10 shots in the same spot in a row, every shot is the same, that type of practice is actually really not going to help you improve, even though it's what most NBA trainers do. It's what your coaches might have done with you in the past at other clubs. But 1-on-0 practice, where you're doing the same thing over and over again, it doesn't help. So instead, what you want to do is shoot as many different shots, and every shot has to be different. So say you're just by yourself, you could be practicing by yourself on a hoop at home or at school, whatever. And maybe your goal is to shoot 10 shots, but every shot has to be slightly different. So you're going to change location every shot. You're going to change range. And also at the same time, you're not just trying to score, but you're trying to score something I call Brads. So I do some consulting for 3 different NBA teams. And one of the first things I do with every team I consult with is introduce them to the idea of Brads, because it's a game changer for your shooting. So what it means is back, rim, and down, Brad. Okay, back, rim, and down. So every time you're trying to score a jump shot, whether it's a 3-point or a mid-range or whatever, you're trying to get it not just as a make, but dead center, back of the rim and down. So what that's going to do is it's going to get you shooting with the best arc possible, and your body's just going to do it naturally without you having to think about, where to put your hand, how to have your feet. You should never be thinking about what you're going to do with your body when you shoot, and you should never do something like form shooting, because again, it's a waste of time, doesn't transfer to a game. Instead, you just want to think, how can I get a Brad on every shot? And then that's the way you can become a great shooter.
Okay, can I ask you then, Alex, why should I not do form shooting, and why should I not worry about, my body?
Absolutely. So this is one of the biggest problems with how basketball coaching has been coached traditionally, and coaches just keep doing it and doing it, but then it goes against all the science. So all the science is basically on skill acquisition and motor learning. What does that mean? Well, that's basically how can you become more skilled as an athlete in any sport. And the problem is when you do something like form shooting, it's completely different biomechanically to how you actually shoot in a game. For one, if you think about it, guys, you will never shoot a jump shot at form shooting range, ever. What would you do in a game? You do a layup, right? It makes no sense to do so therefore, what you're actually practicing in form shooting is how to shoot the wrong way, because your body isn't getting the velocity and the power and the energy generation needed to actually work on shooting. So the thing I'd recommend is, instead of doing form shooting, shoot at the closest distance that you would actually shoot a jump shot in a real game, right? What is the closest distance you would do something which looks similar to a jump shot, right? And the reason why form shooting is a waste of time is because shooting, if you guys picture yourself shooting now, it's a whole body motion, right? You have to use your whole body to generate force. In form shooting, you're only using one part of your body, i.e. your arms. So it's completely unrealistic. So instead, what you want to do is every time you shoot, do shooting where you're coordinating your whole body, so using energy from your whole body, and you're just focusing on having every shot slightly different. It's called repetition without repetition. So, you guys with your coaches, they might have you do things like 1-on-0 through cones. Again, it's a waste of time. Well, instead, maybe you can make it a little better by doing a different dribble move every time through the cone instead of doing the same thing. Again, it's not going to be great because in the game, you don't play against cones, you play against defenders. So the best thing would be to play 1-on-1. But the idea is you're just trying to add unpredictability of different things.
Awesome. Okay. Right. So we're gonna get off of shooting before you go. Do a couple of different things, but I just want to stay here for a little while. What about I'm under 14? I haven't really learned how to shoot properly yet, or I'm a bit older, and I might say to myself that I'm not a very good shooter and I need to change it. What kind of process would you suggest going through in order to get better?
Sure. So I'd recommend doing something called differential learning, which is on my Instagram. I did a whole series of posts on it back in January and February. So it's a scroll down on my feed. So essentially what you want to do is shoot using as much variation as possible. So I'll give you guys some examples. So you can shoot out of different stances. So for instance, you might do one jump shot with your feet really wide, and then the next one, your feet will be super narrow. Then the next one, your feet will be staggered stance, and the next one, you'll be off 1 foot, like a hop. So the idea of doing this is your body naturally is self-organizing and learning different coordinations. And the key thing is here, your coaches will never know what technique is best for you, because every human being, every basketball player is so different, right? So as coaches, we don't actually know what technique is best for you to use. The only way you can self-organize and figure out the best way to shoot for your body is to experience as many different movements as possible. So what you need to do is move as many different ways as you can. So you can do different stances. You can shoot at different arcs. So for instance, you can shoot with the lowest arc possible trying to score, your highest arc, and then a normal arc. You can shoot at different speeds. So you could shoot as quick as you can and then as slow as you can. You could shoot with different movements into the shot. So you could be cutting forward.
Uh-oh.
pick it up and shoot. So you're naturally learning how to shoot from different pockets. And the idea is that if you get enough varied repetition, over time, your shot is going to become more stable because your body is going to find coordination patterns which best suit you and your body.
All right, so let me see if I got this straight. What I'm trying to do, or maybe just one more question before I do that. Why a Brad and not a swish?
Okay, so a Brad is basically, I'll share my, I can't show, if you can, I can share my screen, Rob, so I can show everyone that.
Sure.
So a Brad basically gives the ball, if you guys picture yourselves as a basketball, so picture Steph Curry shooting the ball from the right corner, okay? And as he shoots the ball's flying in the air. Well, to give the ball the best chance of going through the net, it's got to be at a good arc, a good angle. And the back of the rim and in actually gives the ball the biggest margin of error to go and enter the hoop. So let me show you guys a few documents that I have on Brad's, just so you can see them. Give me a second. So these are Brad's. So you guys can see here. Let me just try and zoom in. Sorry, it's coming up with the. Okay, so you guys can see right on this one here, the blues makes, okay? And this was a study done where scientists, sports scientists, they analyzed 10,000 made baskets at the NBA, NCAA, and WNBA levels. And what they found analyzing 10,000 shots, that the highest percentage of shots that went in were Brads, where they went back at the rim and in, these green clusters, reds were the misses. So what you can see with this data size is that the Brads give the ball the best chance of going in because there's less margin for error. And it also means the ball can bounce back at the rim and go straight in as opposed to bouncing on the side and going out. I'm going to show you some more examples. So if you guys picture the hoop right here, and what you're going to see is the Brad zone. So you can see on this 45-degree angle of entry, okay, right here, the ball simply has a better chance of passing through the net. And I'm just going to show one more. So this is basically what the Brad concept is. So imagine the shooter shooting a free throw. You shoot it and the ball bounces straight back to you. As opposed to a made shot here, you make the shot, but it's off right. Here it's off left. So the idea is you're shooting as straight as possible with the best arc every single time. And that's a Brad.
All right. So sticking with this, we're talking about somebody's by themselves, they're practicing and they're working on their shooting. So we're focusing on scoring Brads. We're doing all kinds of different stuff with the height of the shot, the speed of the shot, the pickup in different locations, going left, going right, forwards and backwards, these kind of variations. How do I know if I'm improving?
So the biggest thing, guys, to remember as players is that learning is not a straight line process where it's just like a straight line. The more practice time you spend, the more you're going to get better like this. The problem is that's what most coaches assume learning is like. So they presume that the more time they spend doing drills with you, the more you're going to get better. The reality is learning is a process where there are constant dips and peaks, but over time, obviously it's going to be a gradual thing, but you might have one practice where you're shooting really bad and the other way you're shooting really well. And that is just the nature of how we work as humans, okay? And what learning is a non-linear process. So the idea is it's very important to be able to embrace mistakes. And a key part of this is you have to practice in a way where you're making mistakes. And this is the biggest problem with 1-on-0, 5-on-0, 2-on-0, things without defense. There's no challenge. So you're not actually getting better. So to improve, you actually have to be making mistakes. So, you know, if you're going to practice and you're doing a 3-man weave drill, layup lines, 5-on-0, it's actually a waste of time you being there. You would actually learn more playing at school on your lunch break, playing 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 with your friends, right? So the idea is the more you can play games, things like 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, the better you're going to be as a player. And over time, you're still going to have your peaks and your dips, but you're gradually going to be going up the whole time. And I think that's a really important thing to remember as players.
What would you like for the kids that are listening right now? There's probably going to be situations, forevermore where coaches will do this stuff.
Yes.
How would you
correct.
advise them to react in those moments with a little bit of this information?
I'd actually try and speak to the coach about it, because it's a big part of your development, and you guys deserve the best coaching possible, and you deserve coaches who are coaching you based on research and actually what are the latest trends in basketball. So I would actually have a conversation with a coach, and you can tell them to check out Basketball Immersion, which is the top coach education program in the world. And you can tell them to look at some free resources and just ask them, can I add defense in this? So instead of doing 5-on-0 set play, that is doing a 5-on-0 set play is not going to help you at all in your career. It's going to help your coach win games, but it's not going to help you become a better player. So instead, you should ask the coach, can we play 1-on-1? I want to play 1-on-1, improve my skills. Can I do some 2-on-2? Can I do some 3-on-3? You guys as players should have a role I have an academy in Italy, and my youngest players are 16, and they run some of the practices. So, we might go to practice one day and I say, all right, guys, you got to run the first 30 minutes of practice, do what you want. And they start making their own different 1-on-1 games with different rules, where maybe they only can score with their left hand, or they only have 3 dribbles, or they play 2-on-2. It has to be a pick and roll, or 3-on-3. They have to score off a flare screen. So you're within your rights as players. And I think if your coach gets protective, the coach that you're playing for hasn't got a growth mindset, is old school, and you should go to a club where you can access more modern methods.
Okay. So, well, with that then, I mean, how do I'm the kid, how do I become an elite player? What's your general,
Okay.
feedback?
So, all right, this is the problem. And this is part of what I'm trying to do to change basketball coaches all over the world. You're very reliant on your coach. So you can't be reliant on your coach. And let's be honest, loads of players in the past, especially coming from the UK, have been great and got to great levels in college basketball, NCAA, even having terrible coaches, right? They've made it. So you have to do stuff on your own outside of your basketball practices if you want any hope of being a player, especially coming from the UK. If I'm honest with you, other than Rob Newsom, I don't really know any coaches in the UK who are doing modern stuff. So what you have to do is do things like organize activities with your friends and teammates where maybe you get 3, 4, 5 of you, and you play lots of 1-on-1, 2-on-2, and 3-on-3. So it could be maybe you do 2 sessions extra a week where you are doing that and trying to shoot as much as possible. I think at the end of the day, if you can't shoot, it's going to be impossible to get to the next level unless you're 6'10". It's just the reality of the game. So focusing on variable shooting, so you're shooting as many different types of shot, as much variability, repetition, route repetition as possible. And at the same time, trying to play lots of small-sided games. Now, I think there are some academies trying to do a good job in the UK. I've got a few friends like James Veer, who I think does a good job, Ricky Broadmoor, yourself, Rob, Alan Keane, but still the places are very limited. So you've got to do stuff in your own time if you want any chance of making it.
What would you say to bigger kids at the younger age groups? If I'm 6'4" and I'm 13 years old, what should I be thinking about with regard to my development?
Great question. So the big problem in the UK is anyone like 6'3" plus at a young age is played as a center back to the basket. Unless you're 6'10", you will never be a center at the next level. And even then, centers nowadays can do everything. The days of these old school back to basket bigs who just use post moves are gone. So you have to be a global player, and a global player is someone who can do everything: shoot threes, dribble, drive at speed, finish at the rim, handle the ball and pick and roll, not just setting picks, but handling too. So you have to play everywhere. And if you're 6'4" and you're finding it really easy in your national league to get layups every time because you're just getting too stronger and more athletic than everyone else, you have to start challenging yourself. And maybe in a game, you'll say, all right, now I can't shoot any layups. Every shot has to be a mid-range or a three. So you're having to become more skilled and learn how to adapt and do different situations. Because at the next level, guys, as you go up to under 16s, under 18s, other players will catch up athletically. And then the same things you did at under 14s, under 15s, you just can't get away with, but then you don't have any skills to create advantages at the higher level. So really important, if you're lucky enough to have great athleticism or be really tall at a young age, you've got to keep working on things that you would typically see guards doing, so that if you stop growing, you have the skills to play as a modern day 1, 2, or 3.
Let's talk about ball handling. Same kind of situation.
No static dribbling, no 1-on-0, no dribbling through cones, no 2-ball dribbling.
Right. So what do I do? I'm at the park, or I'm by myself, or I've got one mate or two mates.
Right. So if you're by yourself and you've got no friends, set a timer on your phone and you got to go freestyle, but you can't ever repeat the same dribble twice in a row. Right. So maybe you make a small area and you got to do different dribbles the whole time. Right. If you got a friend, it's amazing. You can play dribble tags. So you're both dribbling a ball. You got a point if you tag the other player's knee. Okay. What else could you do? You could play 1-on-1 dribble knockout. Best game. An even better game is one friend doesn't have a basketball, they're a defender, your offense. For 30 seconds, you have to try and stay alive and keep your dribble alive while your friend is trying to steal the ball. And then you can have different rules. For instance, you could say you can only dribble with your left hand. Maybe you can't turn and face away from your friend, so you have to face him the whole time. Maybe you play in a small area, which makes it much harder for you. So there's lots of ways you can be creative to work on your handling.
Right. Okay. Now, everybody else, Alex, is not doing this. Everybody else I look at on social media, NBA guys, I'm being told that, I saw Jimmy Butler recently, one hand dribble really hard, get a sweat, get after it, put in the grind. Everybody else that all these kids are going to see are doing exactly the things that you're saying don't do. So
correct.
How do kids deal with that?
It's really difficult because we have so many famous Instagram trainers and like all these reels and all that crap on Instagram. Like, oh, this is a cross jab, do a cross jab. And again, it's pointless. So basically anything you see where it's a technique 1-on-0, i.e. no defense, and a coach is showing you how to do it, basically the warning signs should start going off, and it doesn't align with any of the research and evidence in terms of how athletes learn skills. So basically, guys, the best way to have a filter is everything you're doing should have a defender. It's as simple as that. Add a defender to pretty much everything you're doing, unless you're by yourself and you're doing variable shooting. Okay. So, whatever it is, even things like handing the ball in a pick and roll. All right, maybe you could have a chair which is stimulating the picker, but then you've got a defender on you. So they might go under the pick, they might go over, but still they're trying to steal the ball. So you got to figure out an angle to use the pick to come off it. Maybe you might try and reject the pick. You make that worth double points. So really, unless there's a defender in there and unless there's a defender or multiple defenders, whatever activity you're doing has limited purpose.
One more. Okay. If I think about learning a language, I think it's important that you've got to learn the structure of the language and certain basics before you can, have any kind of conversation. And that might translate to like the fundamentals that we're sort of talking about here of how to shoot the ball, how to dribble the ball, all the dribble moves and layups and things like that. You're saying, I think, that those fundamentals aren't actually, it's not necessary to learn them.
Correct. Right? Fundamentals are a waste of time. I call them fake fundamentals because they're fake. Because a lot of the time they're things that can never happen when you're out of defender. Think about all the things coaches do, like zigzag drill, layup line, 3-man weaves. They're fake fundamentals. They never happen in a game, and they don't help players get better. And that's why players feel and look good in practice, but they can never perform in a game for that reason. So instead of fake fundamentals, you want as many different solutions as possible. Great example is a chest pass, right? Coaches say you got to be able to do a chest pass before you can pass. When was the last time you did a chest pass in the game? Never. Instead, you got to be able to pass as many different ways as possible in as many different situations. So that means using one hand, no look passes, going behind the back, passing off the dribble, passing at speed, passing into cutters, into the post, making passes ahead in transition. So the idea is you want as many different solutions as possible, as opposed to just one technique that you try and replicate over and over again.
What kind of film would you suggest that kids watch film, and how should they watch it?
Yeah, film is amazing. So I'd say, if you want to be serious as a player, watching every game back is critical. So you got to watch yourself and watch all your possessions, just so you can get think about turnovers, and really just focus on decision making. That's the biggest thing. Like, you shouldn't be focusing on technique. You should be focused on your decision making. So things like your spacing, you keeping good spacing, you letting the ball see you. Are you making good decisions on passes? Like when you drive, if you draw a help defender, you're kicking the ball, or you're making a bad decision to finish against two defenders. In the pick and roll, are you consistently creating advantages? Are you taking good shots? Are you taking open, high value shots? So you're not going for heavily contested floaters or fadeaways. You're trying to get rim finishes and threes. So, I think there's a lot you can do to watch yourself and get better.
Are there any skills in the game, be they like mid-range pull-ups or any of those moves that you would say to people, don't these are not skills that you should learn at all?
Mid-range pull-ups and floaters I'd spend less time on, because now there's not efficient shots. It's way more important that you get really good finishing around the rim as number one, in loads of different ways. So playing like a lot of one-on-one, you could just have a friend who's always playing defense under the basket in the charge circle, and you always have to finish in the charge circle. So you're finishing really good, and then you got to get your shooting really good. If you can finish really well at the rim, and you can be an adaptive shooter and shoot in loads of different situations, you're probably going to be a pretty good player.
How important are post moves?
Very unimportant.
Really?
Yes. It's if you look at the latest like trends in the game, all right, maybe unfortunately in the UK, maybe we're 10, 15 years away from this, but other countries in Europe are too. The post up is one of the lowest value play types in the game from an efficiency standpoint. Then of course, after that, it's mid-range and floaters. So, if you're really big and you're playing against smaller guys, okay, it can be useful, but the only post up that's high value is when you're right under the basket, like a really deep seal. If you're doing post moves in the block, it's a losing strategy over games. So instead, it's modern skills. So that's things like knowing pick and roll, knowing how to use screenaways, use flare screens, probably an action like pistol, you got to know. A Spain pick and roll, if you're under 18s and you want to be a good player, you have to know a Spain pick and roll. You have to know how to play a horn set. These are the things, if you want to be a player at any level, you have to know these things. And that's way more important than post-ups,
Very interesting. Okay, I know we don't have long, but a few more questions. So I think there's not going to be many, but there will be some 15, 16-year-olds, maybe even younger there, that this is resonating, and they are very serious about becoming an elite player. What can they look at? Is there any kind of digestible research or things that they can read about themselves that are going to help them to understand the kind of things that you're talking about?
Great question. I'd say you're welcome to follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I share a lot of the videos I do with my boys here at the academy, and you can recreate those same activities and situations for yourself. Basketballimmersion.com. You can check out a bunch of our blogs and YouTube videos as well. And, I'm very open. You can send me a message or whatever, and I always get back to everyone. So yeah, I think unfortunately this type of stuff. It's like I'm the first person in the basketball world to do this, really. So there's a lot of change, and a lot of coaches are very resistant. Some of your coaches might have seen my stuff or know me, and they probably don't understand it, and they think it's funny and they dismiss it. But again, it's like, this is the future of the game. And as a player, you've got to look for any edge you can to take a step up, because it's a very competitive world. There are players all over the world, and there are only so many spots. NCAA, if you want to be like a NCAA player or whatever, you're competing literally against thousands and thousands and thousands of players all over the world. So any edge you can get with your training is great. And I think too, just focusing too, not just on the basketball, but things like, I call it marginal gains. Things, if you're really serious about basketball, areas you can make improvements in, which will have major impacts on your game. Things like, are you getting 10 hours of sleep every night? If you're really serious about basketball, you'll stop using your phone at 8 o'clock every night. That's what my players do at the academy. So their phones go away at 8 o'clock so they can get a really good night's sleep. You're eating good food, so you're not having like loads of sugary snacks. You're eating protein. You're working on your body. So it's like, those things are just a given. If you really want to make it, you have to be doing that consistently from 16 years old, because it's just, unfortunately, guys, growing up in the UK, I didn't know what it was like outside the UK until I started traveling with my job. And it's like, every country in Europe that takes basketball seriously, these kids are doing this from 14 years old. So already late. And the problem we have in the UK, guys, is the level of coaching is so low compared to other places. So I'm not being negative, I'm just being honest. It means that you really have to go the extra mile with all this stuff to catch up on everything else.
Right. So for any of the kids that are listening, and some of the people that are going to watch this back later, I endorse pretty much everything that Alex has said here, especially as you get to the end there, where you're talking about sleep and nutrition and taking care of yourself. In any walk of life, for any person, whether they are young or old, the fundamentals actually are the fundamentals.
Exactly.
These things,
just rephrasing them. Exactly.
Yeah. So I wanted to say that, because I know some of the kids, they know me, maybe they don't know you. So first of all, to say that. The second thing is, I know that Alex has been very recently in the States with NBA teams, with NBA coaches who are asking him to help them. So my last question, I think, for now is, what do you see in those guys, the NBA players, that is different to or helpful for young players?
Great question. I think, look, the reason NBA players are NBA players is because they have either two things. Number one, incredible genetics, which has got them in that position. They might actually not be that skilled, but they may get to the NBA because of what they could become, right? When they're in an NBA environment or practice and everything. Or for me, and this is where these are the players who I appreciate the most, and I think the players that we can aspire to be when we're not blessed with those genetic traits, looking at players like Steph Curry, JJ Redick, Klay Thompson, Duncan Robertson. Of course, they're still 6'3", 6'4", they're still pretty athletic, but they're so skilled. And the reason they've got that skilled is typically because of the hours they put in. I think those are the type of players we can aspire to be. And at the end of the day, guys, to be completely honest, if we are 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", anywhere between like 5'10" and 6'6", unless you're a genetic freak, the only way you can make it as a professional basketball player is being an amazing shooter. That's just the reality of it, right? So the sooner you can start doing that, the better it will be. The problem I see is many players, coaches never work on it, and players aren't good enough shooters, and they get to like 17, 18 and it's too late, and they're not good enough shooters and they don't have anything else. So if you really are serious about trying to make it, and I think this is the biggest thing I learned from NBA players, you have to have a separating skill, which is shooting in the modern game. If you're above 6'6", you've obviously still shooting, but you can get it. We've got more leeway, right? You're given more of you're given more kind of people will be like, oh, we can develop you. But unless you're that size and you're super athletic, you have to bring something to the table immediately.
Right. And that's not to say that people that aren't amazing shooters can't make it. It's just that the competition in that pool is so great. And where, you know, the people that are on this call and might listen to this are, you know, in Sussex, in England, it's just the chances of you making it, if you don't have one of those outstanding skills and you don't have the attributes and the genetics, is so small. So the urgency to work on it is huge.
And I'll be honest, Rob, too, like, you know, there are so many good leagues in the world. Like, I had a conversation today with one of my 16-year-olds, so probably the same age as you guys. And I'm very direct and to the point. I said, your goal should be to make 100,000 euros every year playing in a top league in Europe, right? There's a lot of life-changing opportunities you can access, which are realistic. But even then, even to play in a top-level European league, there is so much work you have to do, right? And I think for me, for a lot of the kids in my academy, I want to build their dreams, but be realistic at the same time. So, you know, I don't think we have NBA prospects, but I think maybe we have 2 EuroLeague players and 8 high-level European pros. Now, that's still an incredibly high level, right? But the idea is we're realistic, and they start watching those games at a young age. So my 16, 17-year-olds, they're watching ACB, watching EuroLeague, so they can actually see what these guys are doing. They can see how high the level is, and it really gives them more, you know, motivation to keep practicing, keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I have one very short story about that. I coached in Iceland, you know, 14 years ago, and we went through a couple of Americans, and the third guy that we got at Christmas was 5'10" point guard. Came over, had played at San Diego State. His name was Richie Williams. I mean, you know, this kid was very small, but had played 4 years at Division I college and was probably the best player I've ever seen or been around myself personally. And he went on to play in Germany at a high level. But that contract that he took at Christmas was probably £1,000 a month. And it was at Christmas. So in September, after he's graduated, he doesn't have a job. October doesn't have a job until, you know, maybe Christmas, he's thinking about maybe giving up, you know. So that's kind of gives you an idea of how rare it is and how rare you have to be in order to make it. Not to discourage anybody, just to, you know, provide that sense of urgency to get after it.
So true. And yeah, exactly. And happily, I'm doing some work with Paris basketball this year. We actually play the London Lions in the Euro Cup on the 21st December. So hopefully see some of you guys there. If you have any questions and you go watch the game, I'll gladly speak to you after.
Awesome. How do people follow you, Alex? Can you just give us the handles?
Alex Sarama. So my surname's Sarama.
Awesome. Alex, thank you so much. We will talk again.
Thanks so much for having me on. Guys, wishing you all the best. Have an awesome rest of the summer and good luck with next season.
Cheers, mate. See you.
Bye.
Bye. All right, guys. Everybody that's still on, sorry it was short, but Alex is a busy person. And wow, that was a lot of stuff. We're going to record this and I'm going to send it out to everybody. If you do have questions on any of that, then, you know, let me know. And also get in touch with Alex, follow him on Instagram, on Twitter. And I think, yeah, I just think it's somebody who's really challenging a lot of what's going on in the world of basketball. And he's, you know, like you just heard, he's saying right there, you shouldn't do some of that stuff because it's wasted time and wasted effort and maybe wasted money. So the thing I like to do with any time that I see stuff like this, especially when people are making such a big statement about these kinds of things, is to find out for myself. So I would never dismiss anything that anybody says. There might be some things in there that you might disagree with, or you think maybe they don't fit with the way that you look at basketball or you look at the world. But I would say, with that, just go and test it, you know, go and look at it, go and find out for yourself, ask other coaches, ask other players, and make your own conclusions. And I learned that many years ago in Iceland, again, like 14, 15 years ago, when I was a young coach. I was told, actually, this was also about shooting. I was challenged by the coach that I had there to change the way that I was shooting, and I didn't like it. And he convinced me, you know, whatever it is, man, just try it, see if it works for you, give it everything that you got, and then make your own decisions. And I think that's basically what Alex is doing. You know, he's looked at the game. You can see he's looking at the research, he's experiencing it himself, and he's starting to make his own decisions. And I think that a lot of what we just covered can be extremely helpful for you guys. As I said, ask any questions you have, contact Alex, follow him. And that's it for tonight, everybody. So stay in touch. If you're at camp tomorrow, I'll see you there. And have a good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Sir.